Okay. Hi. So, welcome. This is the last one. I know everybody's like, get on with it already. You get us excited, and then blah, blah, blah. See, Mahana's over here telling me to hustle. But some of you might not get to this part. Depends on who you are, really. No judgment, right? I'm actually one of those people. I like to do the thing first and experience it without knowing anything, and then I like to go back and then I like to do it again because that's fun for me. Okay, so the first thing is we are going to be exploring. The beings are like the the title of this is called Sovereignty Through the Sound Vibration Template of Words. So now we're actually going to get to the kind of the template part of this. And so we're going to briefly discuss morphogenic fields and DNA, because this is all related to language, and the templates. And I also want to share a quick short story, which is a tiny bit startling, right? So when I was little, I was basically accessing information and I was understanding that I was having really quote unquote intense thoughts. And in these thoughts, I just couldn't write fast enough. And the thoughts were basically downloads and they had a dense amount of information. I didn't always keep track of them because I didn't know. I would just sort of, again, space out, but I don't use that term anymore. The beings were like, nope. Seems a good lesson for this. They didn't want me using it because space cadets, space out. It's kind of like your a dumb blonde or ditzy, right? That's what kind of space out means, or like Earth to Ashley, right? Well, Galactic Ashley is right here, right? So that had a kind of a non-beneficial vibration, but I understand what I was doing when I was spacing out is I was sort of getting in a zone and everything would be clear, and then this information would come in, and I didn't even necessarily have the vocabulary at the time to bring it into the physical world. Also, I was like in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, right? Like so not necessarily. Anyways, the point is I always wanted and wished for a device or something that would just record my thoughts, because then I could get it all out and there wouldn't be anything in the way, because I do find a lot of times when information comes in, it is so profound and I just want to be with it, that the idea of speaking can create, I feel sometimes like I lose, I interrupt the download or I lose it, and it creates dissonance or something, or it creates interruptions that aren't necessarily the good kind of interruptions. And yes, there are a lot of good kind of interruptions. Actually, disruptions and interruptions are really beneficial. Especially when things become stagnant or overly routine. But anyways, sorry. Well, I'm just so into words. So I just wanted it to record it. That way it's like if I felt one of these happening, I could like press a button and it would record these thoughts, like the thought stream that was coming in. And then I could be with the experience of it without having to verbalize it or translate it or write it down, right? Because that's kind of similar. Like you can write it down like this and maybe that's easier, and writing down in light language would probably actually be less disruptive. However, what the whole point of this is now this is a possibility, and they're getting closer to it, them meaning like scientists are getting close to being able to do this. Now there's a lot of wonderful things about this. If you cannot speak, or you're incapable of speaking, or you're a quadriplegic, like you can't do sign language or anything, it's going to be hugely beneficial for you. But like all things with technology, when our technology and our consciousness expansion or spiritual awareness, when they are not going hand in hand, we have some issues. And anyways, kind of scary, but there's that, it's also kind of cool. I wonder how it would handle downloads, or different frequencies that are coming into the brain. Okay, anyways, it doesn't matter. But what is fascinating is that there have been several studies, and so essentially what happens is there's a part of the brain, starts with a B, and let me I want to say the Broca, right? The Broca part of the brain, that, and then there's another part of the brain too, but when we are reading words but not verbalizing them, or thinking clear thoughts in our mind, it is the same as when we are speaking, at least there's an overlap in the Broca area of the brain. So what scientists found out is a couple of things that I will try and see if I can make sense. So they found that the shape of the electrical waves recorded in a non-acoustic area of the brain, when linguistic expressions are being read silently, preserves the same structure as those of the mechanical sound waves of air that would have been produced if those words had actually been uttered. So again, they found that the shape of the electrical waves that they recorded in the non-acoustic areas of the brain, so essentially they had people awake and hooked up into their brain. They were testing different parts of their brain and recording the electrical waves that the brain was sending, and they were asking them to read silently. And what they discovered is that the electric waves were the same structure as when the mechanical sound waves. So when we speak, we're making compressions of the waves, of the sound waves in the air, and those compressions are actually how we receive a lot of the emotion behind the sound. But let's go back to this. So essentially there's like a mechanical and an electrical template, and that the two families of these waves where the language lives physically are then closely related, right? Because we have language that exists inside of our minds and language that exists outside of our mind, and the language that is outside of our mind is the language that is spoken. And then we have the language that we're thinking, right? So those are the two like kind of physical areas. So they exist so closely that they overlap independently of the presence of sound, right? So these are this thought forms, right? Like we have thoughts and we're sending them out, right? So it is language that we are sending out, and we are speaking it and we are thinking it. And the reason why we're talking about this is because I hope that people understand that just because it goes unheard or is unspoken doesn't mean that it's not an energetic thought form that is going out, right? Because the templates are the same. The sound, it's not sound though, but the vibratory templates are the same. So they compared the shape of the acoustic wave with the shape of the electric wave, and they were the same. But they also clarify that the signal that was entering the brain was not a sound signal, but it was a light signal carried by electromagnetic waves. So that is amazing, right? Like, this is light. This is essentially telepathic, like mind to mind communication works, is it's traveling through light frequencies that are holding these vibratory templates. And when you get into higher and higher frequencies, what happens is you start working with sacred geometric forms. So when you talk about, and the sound was the word, or the word of God, or in all of these creation stories, that the word was so important, it's because we are meant to say God, but not necessarily God, but whatever name you have for the name of God, because you're naming yourself, right? You are the God. And this is how within our universe we create through sound, through vibration, through these frequencies. But this sound is truly sacred geometric templates, and these are the templates that are holding the vibration of creation. So the more that we expand in our awareness, and the more that our consciousness expands, and we become more, I want to say, higher and higher vibrational beings, more healed, more embodied, we are able to access a different type of holographic experience, because we start working with sound codes, light codes, in a different, more higher vibrational way, in a less dense way. So this is all very fascinating, right? And we're going to talk about DNA in just a moment. And in the way that we hear, I probably don't need to go down this whole path, but the way that our ears are structured and the way that we actually hear sound is just fascinating. Especially because the shape of the cochlea is that sacred geometric Fibonacci spiraled shape, which is in our ears. And it is just so fascinating, right? Because we are meant to sense the vibrations, whether we are able to physically hear or not. We are still able to feel into and feel the vibrations of the unheard sound, because these frequencies are constantly interacting with us all of the time. So the reason why we work with waves in communication, specifically in this 3D earth plane, and the reason why the majority of human communication takes place via waves, these, you can think of them as carrier waves, is because it's the purest system of communication that we have here, because it transfers information from one entity to another without changing the structure or the composition of the two entities. It can change the emotion in subtle bodies and work with other things if you're not in your sovereignty, right? So I don't want to try and get distracted with it. But essentially these waves, just a pure wave form, you can think of it like a square and a triangle. And when those two things come into contact with each other, they communicate that, and then you can think of it like it looks like a house. And they come in, they don't change form, and then they pass through each other. So these waves will travel through us and leave us intact, but they allow us to interpret the messages by the vibrations, and depending on if we have the key to decode it, the key codes to decode the language, which if we're speaking the same language, we do. So it's also, I always love, because information is information. So it's based on the Latin root for forma, which is shape. So again, to inform is to share a shape, right? So when we're getting information, which is what we're bringing into language, again, we are being given a shape, and we fill it with stuff rather than bringing it out in its pure self. And this is why it becomes very challenging to be a pure channel, right? I mean, you're always striving to be the purest channel that you can be. I'm not entirely sure that I necessarily believe that any human is a completely pure channel, just because we're in this plane of experience, right? And it's not a judgment, but we can always strive to do our best. So again, templates, form, information, they are templates. It's like, and you can think of a template like the infrastructure of a house, or the scaffolding, framing, right? It's just providing you the blueprint or the template from which to create from, and how you choose to fill that is going to be different. So ideally, you have the codes, right? And you can fill it with what it's meant to be. But it's like we share a shape. That's why that's a really great example, is to have the square, the square, the triangle, and the square. Watch them come into contact with each other, and they share a shape that looks like a house, but they pass through each other, and neither of them have been affected. That is just the pure essence of that. So that is all just so fascinating. Right, it's called a telepathy machine that records brainwaves. That's pretty intense. Um, telepathy machine that, excuse me, blah blah blah. Telepathy machine that reconstructs speech from brainwaves. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so very briefly, DNA. DNA is composed of a liquid crystalline substance that acts as a form of antenna, receiver, and transmitter. This is what these guys are constantly reminding us, because they are crystalline, we are crystalline, our bones are, our DNA is, every part of us is that. So, again, we are all a form of antenna, receiver, and transmitter. But we are specifically speaking about DNA, but again, the crystal skulls. As a side note, if you work with crystal skulls, I highly recommend that you bring them with you to the meditations and with all of the word work that you are doing, because they will absolutely help you with that. And I'm going to actually include them in the meditation, the intro meditation that you can use for all of them. Okay, back on track. So DNA is composed of a liquid crystalline substance that acts as a form of antenna, receiver, and transmitter of holographic information. So this means that it's constantly in the process of taking in information from its environment and the ether as signs, archetypes, and imagery, and translating it into holograms. Holograms is actually, I think, going to be one of our words. Shh, it's a secret. I think we actually will use hologram. But what I want to remind everyone is, this is what I love about like the word hologram, right? Like it's usually defined as So, hollow is from the Greek word meaning the whole. And you can think of it in terms of unbroken totality, or remember that hollow is, it's also in holistic medicine. So this is why in Chinese medicine you can work on the foot and have it heal the heart, because everything is not a bunch of fragmented, separated parts that create the whole, but the whole is in everything. So you can work on the foot or meridians and then heal a separate body part because everything is connected. So what I love about the term hologram is that, and this is important to how we create when we use language, is hollow means whole, and then gram means message, or to write the message, so to write. So basically hologram means writing the whole. And this is important when we connect it to DNA and understand how our language and our thoughts, which are, remember, there's template signals that are being projected out, are creating within this holographic experience that we are having. So this means that when we're working with holographic information or words and language, right, because we are constantly an antenna, receiver, and transmitter of holographic information through our thoughts and through our language, whether we're conscious or unconscious about it, or whether it's we're working from our subconscious or consciously. So whatever frequency it's tuned into, it acts as a receiver for various forms of information within that same frequency that comes in as an acoustic wave that serves to form an electromagnetic field as a holographic shape that's composed of initially subtle energy, because these shapes and these frequencies that the thought or the language is putting out there, remember, it's a template that's etheric first, but then it starts to attract like frequencies, and then this is when it becomes like it provides the blueprint or the spatial mapping for constructing an exact replica in a more dense form, so in a material equivalent. So without getting too into DNA, because there's still a lot more we need to jump into, essentially DNA as our subconscious mind or body consciousness is literally programmed by our own thoughts and internal dialogue that are imagined as realities and from various forms of media that act as suggestion and become the nature of our thoughts. So this is what's really important to pay attention to, is not only are our thoughts being affected, but our DNA is constantly bringing in everything. Our whole body complex is bringing in everything that is around us, and we are taking it all in. So the news is everything that we're reading, watching, looking at, experiencing, hearing. So what we hear outwardly forms a picture of our reality inwardly. And this inward picture is formed out of hearing something someone says, because it becomes a part of our thoughts and provides a holographic image that imprints the DNA of our body with that information as a form of genetic code. So DNA, like the mind itself, has the ability to both write and read genetic information, and most of our thoughts are formed from what we've been taught or have heard being said, that we incorporate into a form of our mental paradigm as a way that we perceive and interpret the outer world, how we perceive and receive information. So any information sent on radio or microwaves in the form of language and pictures that we take in and think about not only becomes a part of our vibratory essence or our energetic signature in terms of our thinking and feeling, but also as the programming for the DNA of our molecular structure, as it's like as the template that creates our what our physical body complex will step into. So it has the energetic template, and then our body becomes that. So this is a lot of where dis-ease comes from. And a lot of it is the reality inherent in the thoughts, some of which we're conscious of and some of which are in our subconscious. So as we think through a form of internal dialogue where we're talking to ourselves or whatever we allow into us, just really pay attention to what you're thinking about, what's going on around you. This is why the dragon beings are so intense about pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your thoughts. Because if you are one of those people that is consistently aware of your thoughts and how you are thinking, and a lot of this just starts with basic observation, compassionate observation. And when you have a good kind of handle on what your normal thought trajectory or experience is within your holographic reality, what you will discover is that when you have a shift in your thoughts, this can very much point out where there could be an attachment or an entity, because generally it is your thought forms that become amplified, or there will be a packet of negative thoughts that will exist in your thought field, or your thought projections, or your internal dialogue. All of a sudden you might be speaking to yourself more critically or more unkindly. So that's a benefit of healing your self-talk. If you are interested or want to explore your higher sensory perceptions, it can be very beneficial to begin with your thoughts and how you talk to yourself, because if that becomes a space that has more clarity within it and you are more loving to yourself, not only does this shift your own vibration, but you can become more aware of where you might have an attachment or a thought form come into your system that is not yours. So it's just really beneficial. So it's just we're constantly susceptible to being programmed by everything that is around us. And I think that that is something that's important to be aware of. This is not meant to scare anyone. But literally the most important aspect of our physical development, the health of our mind-body complex and our well-being, comes from our thoughts and what type of ideas we expose ourselves to and actively engage in. This goes from television to news to everything. There's a lot of also infrared frequencies that are coming through these, and the way that anything that we read, listen to, watch, music, the kind of music that we listen to. And I'm sure some of you have had that experience where there's been like a really cool song that's been on the radio and you like it because it's like really catchy, and then all of a sudden you listen to the words and then you find out that that song is stuck in your head, and those words that are in there you realize are negative. That is not by accident. I just take just take that in. You don't have to take anything in that I say. I can't believe I just said that. But we're basically programming ourselves because we become one with it. I mean, for all of you empaths that are out there, I hope that you know, or please try this on for size, that you, especially you super empaths, you cannot separate yourself from what is happening on the television. You become one with the TV. So if somebody's getting murdered or raped or some kind of horrific thing is going on, you can become that person because that might be a natural state of you. Any of you that have the shapeshifter plus the empathy, whatever some of these spiritual gifts are, they really can start coming online through these other types of experiences that you have. So, thoughts, and ideas. Let's see. All right. So let's move on. Moving on. This is actually a really good segue. So let's think about the way that our language is structured, right? So language has a powerful effect on the way that we perceive the world. Yes, we know this. English, like most other Western languages, is really linear. So its basic sentence construction, noun, verb, noun, translates into a worldview of X causes Y. So this linearity disposes us to focus on one-way relationships rather than a circular or mutually causative ones where X influences Y and Y in turn influences X because we're always exchanging information. So in a lot of ways, the way that our language is actually set up is creating interference with our natural ways of existing in the world, right? So all of us have experienced getting tangled, sometimes strangled, and we've even been choked out by our own thoughts because each one of us has the propensity of slipping into or in more challenging situations becoming trapped by this one-way road of our linear thinking. This is when you get caught in these emotional loops or these thought loops where you just can't stop what you're doing or get out of this cycle. So you get trapped in these cycles with no way out. And okay, we're not blaming language, right? But what we're doing is we are becoming aware of the deeper layers of how things are constructed around us so that we understand how we can operate within them. Again, how we can hold heart coherency and really claim our sovereignty and start unpacking these words, these belief systems, and these programs, right? So our society values thoughts and information consumption, along with the ability to think linearly. This is not a thing against males, but the male mind, linear, focused, task-oriented. Woo! So our society values these thoughts. Our education system is based on it. We are taught math, deductive reasoning, and we're encouraged to apply logic to everything all of the time, and we become driven by this program and this need to categorize our experiences in our mind and make projections about what the outcome of an action will be. And when we do that, we really limit our ability to co-create within the zero field, in the 0 point field, where we're being asked to let go of attachment to outcomes so that we can work with the pure potentiality of everything, so that we could create something that our minds are not even capable of imagining or knowing that we have this ability to even do. So we limit outcome through attachments to the outcome. So everything that is created from this linear mindset, everything that is created from this energy field is created. And so, okay, so this masculine energy, we're just going to call it masculine energy, this linearity, this this happens and then this happens, and then we need to categorize our experiences, make projections, do 1 through 4 in that order. There's no room for divine timing and divine order. So everything that is created from this energy field is created from the same vibration, structures, systems, and ideals that made it, and continues to broadcast those same frequencies, perpetuating the same vibration, structure, systems, and ideals out into the world. We compare expectations with our experience, weigh the similarity, and adjust our thought processes if we are capable. And that's what we're here to do, right? Is we're to release the expectations, to open ourselves to the pure, symbolic structure that every word creates a symbol, and that we are to experience that symbol purely for what it is. So, but when we go back to this language and the way that we speak and the way that we're being taught in school, and then we take that way of thinking, which is a whole bunch of thoughts and a whole lot of language, and then we create a system. The way that we were thinking, that linearness, that step 1 through 10, don't think outside of the box, do it this way so everything is predictable. What happens is that becomes the intention that infuses the template or the foundation and the blueprint, and then that is the vibration that is being that emanates from the hospitals, the banks, the White House, the government buildings. And then, the government itself, if anybody's ever worked for the government or been in the military, everything has a way, and it must be replicated everywhere because it has to be repeatable, and you have to be able to reproduce it. And if you can't, then something is wrong. And so there is no creative thinking allowed, and it's rarely celebrated, right? Unless those revolutionary artists or creatives that you maybe know of. But here's the thing, anytime a dictator moves into a country, the first people to leave are the artists, mostly because they'll be the first ones to get killed, right? Because it's those artists that might see something. And I'm talking about artists like writers, artists like painters, and these are the recorders of our history. So they tend to be hunted down, right? But we're all working within the hologram, right? Because we are writing the whole, and that is what the hologram is. And I can't wait till we're definitely doing the word hologram, because I think there's a lot of people that have a negative feeling about what the hologram is, right? And so we definitely want to look at that. Okay, so this leads us into so additionally, when we're in this linear and orderly mind that is overly valued, then if you, this is how when you're somebody that's maybe like me, right, or probably all of you that are here, if you naturally think in spirals or circles, I mean, how often have I have been placed in like the slow classes in grade school, or diagnosed with something that reduces our brains down into a pile of sad letters. And we're most often disciplined for being wrong, and essentially what's happening is we're being disciplined for being who we are, because we haven't quite, especially when we're younger, been programmed out of that. And depending on how in our nature we are, that could stay longer. So then the school system thinks we're being defiant. Not true. Not true. Lies! Okay, so here's another buzzword for you. Linguistic determinism. So this is the idea that language and its structure limit and determine human knowledge or thought, as well as thought processes such as categorization, memory, and perception. I don't know why I can't say that word right now. So this is just regular me talking for just a second. I believe, or at least in this moment, my belief is going to be one of the words too. And I kind of want to deconstruct that for us, but not right now because that comes later. It's okay. How about this? I like this. It is not an accident that prioritizing the linear mind it's not an accident that we are in a society that prioritizes the linear mind. It was designed into our every system of the old paradigm and as an important consciousness limiting function, right? So the idea of this is that our language, unless we become aware of it and we break free from the program, it doesn't mean that we have to stop communicating with language altogether. Communication is very important. It's hugely helpful. But if let's just say we're like, oh yeah, this linguistic determinism, like, wow, language and the way that it's structured, it really does limit, and maybe it has been programmed to determine human knowledge or thought, as well as the way that we process information, the way that we think, hold memory, perception, basically the way that we perceive and receive information. This is why this is exactly why it can be very challenging for many of you, or for any of us, to bring in these light codes and these sacred geometric frequencies through and into our system. And then those of us that work with light language or work with these really dense downloads of information, these must be translated through us. And this is part of the reason as to why the beings oftentimes struggle with communicating word for word, is because they are sending thought, heart, love, information to us through vibration. And what I frequently talk about, especially in the channeling course and in the other courses, is this idea. It's not an idea, it's a cellular telepathic communication. And to me, cellular telepathic communication includes the heart, it includes the body, it includes the whole body. And this is how I directly work with the beings, and it opens up everything so that you can do your best to receive and bring this in. And yes, in many ways you are limited by linear language, but that's not an excuse. You just understand that you are only gathering or combing out a portion of it. But this is also why when you bring through sound vibrations, even if you are like so lost by everything that I am saying, understand that on a level you are receiving the information of the energy that is coming through the words, right? And that is what is important. And so when we're communicating like that with these higher vibrational beings, that's when we remember what language truly is, and the power of language, the power of light language, the power of thought, the power of all of this. If you don't open yourself to all of this, you don't have to do it all at once, or you can do it all at once, and you just live in what is expected and what is accepted, then you stay in these limiting functions that are intentionally designed into our structure, into the old paradigm, because this is what keeps us down and not claiming our sovereignty. It's what keeps us, and I don't like to use the word enslaved because it has a whole historical context that clearly I have not experienced in this lifetime. But we'll just use the word enslaved lighter if we can, but with less, well, I mean, this more of like there's a mental enslavement process. Hostage. Can we use hostage? We are the we are prisoners, right? But we're really not prisoners. So, but our language is set up to contract consciousness and limits expanded sensory feelings such as intuition, which is like level 1. Basically, our language is limiting to like level 1 innate part of ourself, which is intuition. And then after intuition, then you can have like psychic senses, and then you can have higher sensory perceptions, and then it just becomes more expansive and more expansive, and you never remember any of these things if you become limited by the way that you think or the way that language is designed and structured. So when we fall into our linear thinking minds, what happens is we close down our hearts, which closes down our body, feeling, and our sensory system. So we not only see ourselves as separate from source, but we become fractured within ourselves, right? And that's not, no. Right? So according to Nietzsche, is language is a prison, right? So, and linguistic determinism states that it's a prison too. So whether you believe this or not, true and untrue, the truth of this statement depends entirely on our ever-shifting, changing awareness of what is and what isn't. And it isn't about our awareness of the situation or whether or not we believe language is or isn't a prison, although this is not unimportant information. So we know that none of this is really about language. Nothing is ever really about whatever it seems to be. So an example is I go to look for wedding dresses with my mom. I'm sobbing. We're arguing about the dress, but it doesn't have anything to do with the dress. But that's just the play that is taking place, and that is what this other play within the play is occurring between she and I. And if you weren't aware, you would focus on the dress as being the problem when there's a whole bunch of other energies going on, none of which has anything to do with the dress. The dress is just the thing that has entered the holographic reality in order to charge the situation, to bring up the emotions, to bring up the thoughts, to bring up the language, because it's showing you a message. So anyways, so nothing is ever about what it seems to be. And this is often challenging to remember because we can become engulfed by our own emotional experiences and daily interactions. And I always think it's so funny because the beings always say, it's never about the dress, right? Because that's funny. So that's kind of our joke, because that really did happen. But it wasn't about the wedding dress. Which didn't happen, so it's fine. It's funny though. But here's the thing: is in all of this, there is an important opportunity, and it's really a question because the beings, specifically the Aeon Collective, came in and said to prioritize questions over answers. So this is really more of a question. The better question might be, am I imprisoned? If so, why am I imprisoned? Who has imprisoned me? What or where is my prison? And so the answers to these questions entirely depend on our awareness that is constantly shifting from moment to moment of whether or not we are in a prison. Meaning, if we are aware that we or some part of us are in a prison, then we have the freedom to choose to leave the prison or not to leave the prison. There is absolute power in choice. And no matter how big or small the choice may seem, this is one of those life-altering moments within our human experience that calls out to us, our courageous hearts, and says, do you really want to know? And this is the question before you start diving in to all of these words and before you start opening Pandora's box. The question is, do you really want to know? Why? Because we can't unknow something once we know it. So if we know that we are in prison, it means that we will also know that we are our own prison guard, and that the walls and the prison itself are constructed of a system of materials that were entirely created by us. So once we know, we can't unknow, and then we have to, well, we don't have to. You can just projectile vomit blame on everybody else around you, or you can be the brave, courageous beings that you are and start taking personal responsibility for these prisms. That was a good. That's funny, for these prisms that we have created within our holographic reality. So prisms, prisons, right? Like it's all what is. From every moment, what is. Because why? Because what's happening is oftentimes we cling to the prisms. This is so funny. We cling to the prisons. Why? Because they are part of the known, and human beings are terrified of the unknown. So what is happening? This is really once we allow ourselves to recognize that we are the prisoner and the prison guard, and the prison itself has been constructed of a system of materials that currently no longer serve us, but that we're clinging to entirely, and that all of this was created by us. And this is where our journey both begins and ends, right? The infinite alpha and omega. It is an initiating opportunity, and initiation, it is. Why? Because this is where who we are becoming, basically who we already are, is challenging who we believe ourselves to be as we watch who we thought we were going to be disintegrate. So, want me to say that again? This is an initiating opportunity where who we are becoming, really who we already are, is challenging who we believe ourselves to be as we watch who we thought we were going to be disintegrate. So our ascension journey asks us to be courageous and compassionate, but we are only required to be willing to see or to know to the best of our abilities, so that we can allow ourselves the opportunity to see or to know differently. That's all that we're trying to do. So we're going to take these words, we're going to put them in Pandora's box, and we're going to shake them up, and then we're just going to activate our divine will, and we're going to say, I am willing with my courageous heart to see or to know differently. And then you're going to open it, and then you're going to see what those words mean for you. So there is great strength and opportunity here, but I won't lie, it could come with some pain and discomfort, right? Because the beings are always saying that oftentimes we must walk through pain, and cross this threshold of pain, because that is often the gateway to our ascension. So I won't lie, it could be uncomfortable. But as this process unfolds, what happens is we feel ourselves coming undone, completely unknown to even ourselves, right? And this is when I see it when people come to me, and I've experienced it with myself even though I won't get into it, but I love the unknown. And it's just, woo, I don't know. It's magical, I'm telling you. Because anything is possible. And I do recognize at some points in our life it's much easier to be in this unknown than other points, right? I get it. So as this process unfolds, we feel ourselves coming undone, completely unknown to even ourselves. We are experiencing and living the process of recreation. Yes, I just thought of something, but it was a big thought, so we're just going to leave that big thought over here. It was a kind of a mini, big, mildish download. It'll come up when we use the word creation. So we are experiencing and living the process of recreation, where we are in absolute beauty, where we are in the absolute beauty of raw creative potential energy that is liminal space, not quite what we were and not yet what we have become. And that is an amazing place to be, right? And this is when we get to start accessing some of our divine gifts, when we just let go into this. We can call in our multidimensional aspects, our galactic families. We can meet ourselves with unconditional love and grace, regardless of whether or not we realize that we are standing in a prison of our own design, holding the keys to an unlocked door. Sorry, we all have done this, right? Like this is and to be clear, this is part of the victimizer program that is running in all of these morphogenic fields that are around us, and these fields create they influence the blueprints and the templates that are the grid system that is in Earth, and our emotions are also influencing that grid system. So this isn't about judging yourself. This is about having an understanding that you're not the only one that maybe is about to realize or hasn't realized or just realized that they were standing in a prison of their own design, holding the keys to an unlocked door. I don't know why that's so funny, because it's ridiculous. You're like, let me out, I'm in prison, I'm a victim, and you're holding the keys to an already unlocked door, and you built a prison and maybe did a sloppy job, and there's only really one wall. So, and I'm not making fun of trauma here, right? But there is a need to get through trauma once you are aware that you have been traumatized, or when you know that you've been traumatized. And this comes from, and I'm going to say this very, very briefly. The moment that we are experiencing the trauma, we are capital V, a victim. Right? When you have a gun pointed to your head, you are a victim. But once that trauma is over, when you are capable, it is your responsibility to do your best to work towards healing that within you to the best of your ability, and finding help and reaching out. And trust me, I understand that this is difficult. But at least until it's healed, or at least through your awareness, that you still take responsibility for that trauma. And that might mean that you have to sometimes share the trauma with people, or if you're going to be in a situation where you're uncomfortable, then you remove yourself from that situation. But it's not... What happens is, and what the message is from the beings is what you don't want to keep doing is living in that fear state or space, and to keep perpetuating the victimizer energy. And I have created a small course called The Frequency of Fear, which goes over all of this and has a bunch of meditations that's included in it. But what I also like to say is the Frequency of Fear is included in Meet the Galactics and in future Galactic Guided intensives is my intention. But currently, because I just created it, and it is currently in the Meet the Galactics course, and I think it will grow and is really beneficial and helpful, because we have lots of fears that come up. Some are deeper, and some are not as deep. But the ones that might not seem as deep, there might be a lot of shallower fears, but that can be creating a resonance with some deeper trauma or a past life, right? So I like to talk about this in-between liminal space. I like to call it in it's when we're in this liminal space and we are doing our best, we're taking responsibility, the divine omnipresence is always supporting us. And it's when I like to call it the caterfly or the butterpillar. So it's like we are the caterpillar, right? And then we are the caterfly or the butterpillar goo, right? And that's that crystalline, like chrysalis, right? It's that crystalline liquid that we just let ourselves merge and become one with that, and then we can write a new program. So you can think of yourself as going through this morphogenesis process every time, where you can be the caterfly or the butterpillar goo. You become one with that goo, but you have, through your own responsibility and courageous heart and love, the ability to program that caterfly butterpillar goo, that crystallinity that is you, and then emerge, and come into the heart of your home frequency. So yes, I think that is probably enough, because I have 100,000 more pages of this, but I will just leave that for. So a lot of this is from the light language course, because we talk so much about language. It's really important to understand this linear structure that we come from and how different it is from light language and what light language is. But it's just that language is just so important because it's a part of the program, but it's also what we are, what we create from these sound frequencies, that come from the sacred geometries that we are working with. And in these higher vibrational frequencies, they have to be just stopped down so much to get here into this density, and then to work through this linear language is challenging, but it is not impossible. But it becomes better when we look at these words and we heal and we raise the frequency and the vibration of the words. And I'm just really so excited for everyone, because I just have really good feelings about the next 30 days, and I feel like some of you all are going to make huge transitions through all of this, and just big shifts, and I'm going to co-create some things. It'll just start happening, because this is a lot of this is coming on right now, is because these are the frequencies and these are the energies that we are in right now. So this isn't just out of the blue. This isn't something that's random, like, oh, I think I'm going to do this, because if it was, I would have done this years and years and years ago, when my galactic family came in and we worked through the words of power and mother, and masculine and feminine, and love, and a couple of these other frequencies, right? Because these are all sound vibration complexes, right? And they are related to archetypes, and even archetypes themselves. I don't want to go off on the whole thing, but archetype itself has a whole bunch of different meanings that has definitely left the original purpose and points of what an archetype was, because an archetype was originally meant to be the divine blueprint of what we are. It was the gods that were here. It was like the Egyptian pantheon. It was these beings that didn't necessarily have a dark part of them. It was the archetypes were the gods, and they were to remind us of our divine blueprint. They were mirroring to us, like, look, this is you. This is the archetype that is you. So divine blueprint were archetype and divine blueprint were almost synonymous. Divine blueprint and divine archetype, those were synonymous at the time. and then things just, but that's okay. Because we're here now, and we're also here in the future, and we're also here in the past, and we're affecting change on all of it. So, with that, I guess I think we're gonna be quiet now. Is it possible? I don't know. Okay, so have a lovely, wonderful. Oh, I know what I was talking about. I didn't just make this up out of the blue. I knew that the beings wanted to say something. So we didn't just make this up out of the blue. This is coming on right now because, so this is coming in right now, specifically at this time, not just necessarily, although the Syrian corridor and the solstice energies and all of these fire energies and all these dragon beings that are coming online from the grand central sun that are coming in and infusing all of these solar codes are absolutely starting an entrainment program, which is going to bring up these belief systems regardless. So regardless of who or where or what you are, things from this moment, as we perceive them and look at current potentialities, are going to become more polarized. And you can understand polarization as polarizing oneself towards love or away from love. And you can think of things just becoming more extreme, like the light getting lighter and the dark getting darker, but still understanding that these are still a part of the whole. Additionally, when you are shifting between signs, between the astrological signs at these key golden points, these nodes in time. These are extremely powerful frequencies where what is essentially happening at this time, this is why the blueprint has been coming up so much, is because during these times of transition, before, so many of you experienced a really big teaching moment in 2020. A lot of things came up for you. But when we transition into these new epochs or eons, what happens is the template becomes infused into, so it is the divine template, the golden template that becomes infused in the next, until the next change of the zodiac signs, right? So we just moved from Pisces to Aquarius. And if you think about the time of Pisces, it was Yeshua who came in with others to bring in those codes to lay the foundation or the template for that Pisces eon. And this is another eon. And so what is happening is that the divine template has frequently in your history come through gods or the 12 solars, not the 12 solar suns, the solar lords, but I'm wanting to make them. They're coming from your source, the center of your great central, your goal. Oftentimes these, okay, not even oftentimes, through each transition, this is why 12 has become such an important number for you. And know that each time we say 12, we mean 13. It is only 12 because the unity consciousness has not taken place. So 12 solar suns becomes 13, one wholeness. Yes? So 12 disciples, 12 DNA, 12 crystal skulls, and with the 13 crystal skulls is the myth. It is 12 plus 1 is 13. 13 carries the whole, is the whole. And you realize that everything is a hologram where everything has the whole and all of the pieces. So what happens is every transition period through these corridors of time is these 12 beings, these 12 energetics infuse themselves as nodes on a template that are laid out with a language, with a sacred geometric language and a code for through your divine will and your divine choice to follow this code and to be activated and to activate it. And this becomes the blueprint for this next time period. Oftentimes, humanity has perceived this as coming through a being such as Yeshua, or a previous time like the Egyptian pantheon, or some. It really depends on the theme of the year. So because Yeshua is often associated with Pisces because of the emotional body and the love and the unconditional love, and also Mary. So it is not just Yeshua as a singular being, and this is what is important to remember. It is not the God in the Bible. But also to remember that the potentialities and the possibilities of this upcoming cycle has very much to do with you all individually, you as the gods and goddesses within you coming to bring the template online. And this next period of information is very much about bringing the divine feminine back online, as nothing can be accomplished or brought through without you, so without her. So feminine first, and then with the feminine and the masculine together, and then bringing the Trinity into a wholeness with the divine feminine, divine masculine, and the divine child together. And this is what needs to be done through each of you. And we would also like to suggest that it is also about discernment, about doing your own work, and to understand that you can think of each of you, whether you are a channel or not, all of you have the potentiality or the potential, the opportunity to connect to divine guidance, which means that each one of you is a library. So you can consider yourself as a book, and you each hold codes and codexes. And when you put all of these books together, this fractal field becomes the entire informational field and source. So we are truly entering into an open source of information. We are meant to use language to communicate and to understand the vibration and the energy behind these languages that we use, and to understand our power in our thought, because this has not yet truly integrated into the human as to how powerful their thoughts are. And so we wish for you to have a wonderful and blessed journey over these 30 days in many blessings and self-discoveries. May you find wisdom and grow courage and expand love. And with that, we say thank you, thank you, thank you, and we love you, we love you, we love you. Okay. Bye.